Open your Bibles. Open your Bibles to Jeremiah 18. Verse 1. Jeremiah 18, verse 1. The word which came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Arise, and go down to the potter's house. Arise and go down to the potter's house, and there will I cause thee to hear my words. Then I went down to the potter's house, and behold, he wrought a work on the wheels. Circle that word work. It's a Hebrew word. I wrote something in the back of my Bible here. Let me just go to it. It's a Hebrew word that involves an employment of something. Something that you put in service. And it's going to be done on the wheels. I'll be right back to that verse here in a second. I'm just looking for where I put my note. Somewhere in my Bible. There it is. I had you circle the word work there. Then I went down to the potter's house. Behold, he wrought the work on the wheels. The potter is actively involved in doing what he's going to do because he wants to put you into service. That's right. He wants to put you into service. How many times I've said over the years, the word in the New Testament that's used, ergon, for work. There's other words also, but that particular word is the employment of something. It usually involves the employment of something. If you're, for an example, in the business world, you're employed in whatever you're involved in the business world. But when it comes in the service of God, employing the Word of God and what surrounds it, God's employing a work on you. God's employing a work on me for service. That's right. Everything else that you do throughout the week. Most Christians that I talk to don't realize you're doing it not just to feed your family, pay your rent, but probably something also, if you're involved with some place, some ministry, in the employment of the Word of God, so others can hear it. And he went down to the potter's house, and behold, he wrought the work on the wheels, and the vessel that he made of clay was marred in the hand of the potter. So he made it again another vessel. Put an understanding of this. If the clay is human beings, people, you, me, let's go all the way back to the beginning, Adam. Adam became marred. So you had to put the clay again back on the wheel. Before that happens, the potter had to do something. And most people that preach on these verses or write about it forget a very important element before we get to the wheel. Before we even get to the potter's house. I'll get to that. So he made it again another vessel, as seemed good to the potter to make. Then the word of the Lord came to me, saying, O house of Israel. Now he's writing to the house of Israel. Who? Most preachers out there, unfortunately, think this is only written to Judah because Jeremiah was living in that time when Judah went to bondage, into captivity. But Jeremiah didn't. He eventually would go with the house of Israel, and he went to build and to plant. But that's another subject for another time. But I want you to personalize it to you and me tonight. You can stay on in these verses as I go back and forth with them. Then I went down to the potter's house, and behold, he wrought the work on the wheels. These scriptures indicate three necessary elements that Jeremiah was sent to observe. I'm going to try to reach it on the board with my pointer. Go to the board. He went to observe the potter, which I wrote here is God or the Lord Jesus. The clay, which is us. But also the process. What process? What God does to make something desirable, something useful, and something valuable. That's why he wrought the work on the wheels. Means that he's employing what he does to put us in service, to make us desirable to him, useful to him, and valuable to him. Valuable to him. And of course, we understand, if you keep it on the board there, that God is the potter. Number 2, we are the clay. Number 3 is the process, which is used by the potter, like I said, to make something desirable, useful, and valuable. Now, research shows that were basically 5 steps to make pottery in Jeremiah's day. Come back to me now. 5 steps. Now, you might know something about how to make pottery today, in all the modern techniques and instruments they use. Get your mind off of that. Put yourself into Jeremiah's time period. In his day, there was basically 5 steps to make pottery in Jeremiah's day. And some of these steps are no longer necessary in our day. But remember that Jeremiah is painting a picture here, what God wants us to understand about the truths in these particular scriptures, folks. After you understand what Jeremiah went to observe, who the potter was, who the clay was, and the process, there were basically 5 steps. You can look up the history, any sources you can find. I don't want to get into all that tonight. But there was 5 steps that the potter took in the process of making vessels of clay. And remember, keep this in context to the time period, so you get the full understanding what Jeremiah is painting here with words, because it's very important. It's very important to understand what he went to observe and how important the process is to God. Now, in order to obtain a clay, in order to obtain the clay, and you don't see that here, we just jump into, after Jeremiah is given the instruction to go down to the potter's house, to see the work on the wheel. But there's something very important when you understand the processes of the process of making a finished product, what you had to go through. And number one on the board of the first of 5-step process, let's just call it that, is the choosing of the clay. Now, in order to obtain clay, a potter first had to take a trip. Guess what? Where? He had to take a trip to the pit. To the pit. The pit represents the world. In this case, to which Jesus came in order to find us. I mean, you go to Psalms 40. You go there quickly. I'm not going to stay there, but you could go there. You go to Psalms 40. So you get a better understanding that the first step in the process is taking that trip to the pit to choose the clay. Here you have in Psalms 40 verse 2, He brought me up, and also out of a horrible pit. Out of a miry clay. Some translations, you'll have a pit of noise. That's what the world is like. It's a pit of noise. Everybody has a formula or the solution or some know-it-all understanding of how you should live your life once you become a Christian, including a lot of preachers. And they try in these days to avoid your understanding of what these processes are and what you're going to go through. Starting the very first day, in my opinion, because before you were chosen, Christ already went down to that pit to pluck you out. He brought me up also out of the horrible pit, or, like I said, a pit of noise, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, established my goings. Back to Jeremiah. In Jeremiah's day, as well as David's, and even Jesus' day, there was no, what's a craft store? I know here in Southern California, one of those type of craft stores is a place called Michael's. You go in there, get all kinds of arts and craft stuff. You get some clay. Hobby Lobby, there's one that's been in the news lately. There was no Hobby Lobby in Jeremiah's day. There was no Michael's in Jeremiah's day. There was none of these arts and craft stores in Jesus' day, where you could go down and make a simple purchase and you can find all kinds of assortments of clays which you can mold and work with. No. That's why I said, put yourself in this time period. What a potter had to do is to go down to where? The pit. The pit. For what purpose? To choose the clay. I mean, you've heard this scripture, Isaiah 51. Many times, probably. When somebody preached it to you, or several preachers preached it to you, or you read it yourself. Isaiah 51. The very first verse. Hearken to me, and of course these are comforting words to Jerusalem now, but I want you to personalize it tonight. Hearken to me, ye that follow after righteousness. Following to be right with God. By trusting and faithing in Him. Ye that seek the Lord, hearken to me, ye that follow after righteousness, ye that seek the Lord. Look unto the rock whence ye were hewn, and to the hole of the pit whence ye are digged. I got news for you. You might be a hotshot in this world. You could be the richest man. You could be the most famous man or woman in this world. You could have what the world thinks, everything going for you. If you don't have Christ, if you're not a disciple of His, you're in the pit with everyone else. Material things and fame might give you the illusion that you're something special, you're something desirable, and you're something valuable. But that's only temporary. That's not eternal. I teach eternal things. Yes, it does affect the here and now, but I look unto the future. Our eternal future. And I know to get there, we got to remain faithful and obedient as disciples of Jesus Christ. When the tough gets going, or when the circumstances get tough, the tough get going. You've heard that many times. Well, that means we have to press in closer to Jesus Christ. Keep trusting, keep faithing, keep being obedient. One of the most discouraging things as I go through some circumstances myself right now is to see the drop, the lack of communication, because I couldn't go live one night. And I gave you a general reason why: my health. Poof! You did a magic act. You disappeared. I started questioning myself. Are these just a bunch of quick fix listeners? Followers of Jesus Christ? They just want the next best thing? Listen, I know where every one of you are going that you share with me. You're not going to be getting half as much there as you are here. But you wouldn't hesitate if there was a need to step up. I was blown away. Come Wednesday night, to see after the first 15, 20 minutes, not even that, everybody went poof, gone and did something else. Why couldn't you even dedicate 1 hour to keep emailing, keep saying, I'm praying, I'm agreeing, make phone calls and say it? I know where I'm going. We're in Psalm 83 right now, the hidden ones. I'm going somewhere with the lost tribes of Israel that no one's ever been before, maybe one or two, and no one recent in the last 50 years. I'm taking it to the New Testament, eventually. I know what I'm doing is precious. But you're demonstrating over and over again. Well, I send in my money. Keep your money if that's your attitude. I'm like Jesus, especially if you listen to the giving series, Where is Your Heart? Or read the 2 volumes that are already been produced. That you should ought to have done anyway. And it's for your benefit mostly. Because you're accumulating eternal rewards. Yes, it will affect others here where they get the possibility, but you get the benefit of it. They do, but you do, because Christ is accumulating those all up there for you. And He's eagerly waiting to see what you're going to do with it while you're here and now, in the here and now. So you should have done that anyway. So don't give me that excuse. Am I going to quit? No. But it's sorting out people. Where was I? Hearken to me that follow after righteousness. Verse 1, chapter 51 in Isaiah. Ye that seek the Lord, look unto the rock whence ye are hewn, and to the hole of the pit whence ye are digged. Like I said, in order for the potter obtain the clay, he had to go down to the pit, folks. The pit represents this world which Jesus came into in order to rescue us from that pit. He found us. We don't find Jesus. He finds us. You know, it's just like any other pit. The more you dig, what is the end result going to be, or the continuing result? The deeper it gets. People around this world, without Jesus, even Christians without being disciples of Jesus Christ, are digging the pit, and it's getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And the deeper it gets, guess what? The darker it gets. It gets so dark that the only thing that you can see, the only light illuminating eventually, that's illuminating the clay, is the light that comes from straight above. That's the only thing that illuminates it. The light that comes from straight above. Jesus has been our light. He has rescued us. It's interesting to note, if you look at these verses back in Jeremiah 18, that the clay, even though it's not mentioned here, but when you understand the process, that it took for the potter to make something on that wheel, certain things had to happen first. And the first step in the process, what I'm trying to say, is choosing the clay on the board. Choosing the clay. We are the clay. You notice, no matter how much you try, no matter how much you seem to be accomplished with yourself, in your own eyes, or people just blowing smoke up you know what about you, if Christ didn't rescue you from that miry pit, if he didn't pull out that chunk of clay, which is you or me, that clay cannot get out of the pit by itself. No matter how successful, no matter how many want you to, you cannot pull yourself out of the pit and place yourself on the wheel. The potter does that. And if you could, think about it, if you could, you think you can make anything valuable to him if you leave him out of the process? You think you can make anything useful if you leave him out of the process to make you useful? You think you become a prize vessel? Oh, to the world's eyes. But I think I made that point. The world falls short. It all falls short. There is no self-man-made vessels in the kingdom of God. We have too many preachers giving that illusion these days. But there's no self-made vessels in God's kingdom, period. Do you get that? If we had any value, the only value that clay possesses for the potter, that it's in it raw. And at that point, before God chose you and pulled you out of it, it's raw and in an unmade form. Now God's going to take, you might think it's in a pretty decent form, but to God it's plach. And that's not a word, so when they transcribe this message, good luck on that. Come up with something. You know, when you look at the other verses that I've read to you, both in Psalms and in Isaiah, you got to stop, because there's an interesting note about the pit. And the note is, what you have to note it in your Bible, it is a dangerous place. It might not look like it, but it is a dangerous place. Why? Because it's a dangerous place for the clay to live out its existence. Its existence without hope. And once again, I'm talking about the hope here and now once you're rescued, but eternal hope. The big picture. But you know what, folks? It's also dangerous for the potter. When people preach through these messages, they forget that. Or they preach a different type of message. But I think it's important enough to stop to remind us. Even for the most faithful disciples of Jesus Christ, we all need to be reminded on occasion. It's also a dangerous place to the potter. Why? Because the potter has to venture down, where? To that pit to get a piece of that miry clay. He has to venture down into that mire stuff. Not an easy task if you understand the process in doing that in those days. It's at the risk of life in some cases that the potter obtains the clay in that miry pit. When you think about it, when you piece it all together, wasn't that the step that Jesus, that first step that Jesus did for us in the process that cost his precious life to get a chunk of us and call it his possession? All this has already been played out. When Christ came on the scene, he's the master potter now. I'm not, no other preacher, no other priest, no pope. We're teachers of God's word, but Christ is the master potter here. The clay does not choose the potter. The potter chooses the clay. The first step in the process. You know, I've been to John 15. Don't go there. I've been to John 15, 16. I had a mark in my Bible, so I go there real quick. You've heard me preach this so many times. When I preached on Jesus being the vine. Verse 16, it says, "Ye have not chosen me." I hate those signs. Choose Jesus today. Stupid. Plain stupid. "Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you." And that's where most people tune out because they don't think they're preachers or ministers, so they're not ordained. So it doesn't really concern them. Well, it's a bad translation. Appointed is a better translation. I have chosen you and appointed you. We don't choose Jesus. We don't choose God. He chooses us. If you look at all the research about this history, this period in history, there was a process the potter would go through to choose the clay. Based on what? Based on what the potter was going to make. What he needed and what he wants to make. Remember, we're the clay. When the potter foresees or envisions the vessel that he wants to make, guess what? He then uses no, he doesn't uses. He then looks for the clay which has a certain kind of touch. It has to be the right touch. That's right. That's why you don't choose Jesus. He chooses you. Clay, no matter what you might think, is chosen by Jesus Christ. And he's looking for the right touch of clay. Because when the potter, Christ being the potter, touches the clay, he imagines what it might become. I never could imagine when Jesus chose me what I'd be doing today. But he did. Same goes for you. And he's not done with any of us. He can imagine what it might become. Why? Because he's touching it. He's feeling it. He's molding it. He knows what others can't see, including what I can't see about myself and including what you can't see about yourself. He sees it. God is the potter, folks. We are the clay. And there is a process. There is a process. Back on the board. The process begins for the potter when he chooses the clay. The first step for the clay is getting out of that pit. But getting out of that pit is but the first step. There's more steps to come before the clay is at its place of what God intends us to be, which is making something desirable, making something useful, making something valuable as his disciple of his Son, Jesus Christ. We all came from the pit of this world. And it's very important that we remain thankful for God who sent his only begotten Son to yank us out of that miry pit. We're the only hope. And while you're in that pit, is you don't seek any deeper, any further away, if you can even realize it, what Christ came to do for all of us, to rescue us. His only Son, Jesus, went to go find us. He went to this pit to find us, folks, to rescue us. We are nothing. We are not going nowhere. You heard me. We are not going nowhere. We're just dust. We're just whatever you see this is. Look in the mirror if you can't imagine it. We are just dust waiting to die. And a hand reached out. And a hand reached out and did what? Touched us. You don't see it in these verses, but it's important to understand the hidden truth behind these verses about the process, about what was sacrificed for you and me. Jesus Christ to pull us and snatch us away from this world and what it offers, and it's going nowhere. What they offer. It's going where you think it's a never-ending road, but it turns out to be a dead end. I don't know how simpler I can make it. We're just dust waiting to die, but Jesus reached out and grabbed us. He touched us. God saw something. Christ saw something both in me and you that we could have never imagined ourselves. Have I driven that point home as I start on these verses? Jeremiah 18:4 reminds us, you can read it over and over, that God makes us into instruments. Instruments that are being put to use according to His design. And here's the tough part. And not necessarily according to our desires. And not necessarily according to our desires. Well, I didn't want to hear that. Who does? One of the problems I've been facing is my head. I've been spinning and spinning. I felt like I've been on the wheel. Round and round and round and round. Where I can't read, I can't even hardly function. No, He knows my situation. He knows my circumstances. As I said before we started, He's still the great physician. He could heal me like that. And I'm trusting and faithing He will. But if He chooses to go down the doctor route, the specialist route, so be it. I am healed. That's what I'm claiming. Because Jesus, last time I checked, is still in the healing. I hate to say business because I don't really like that, but He still heals. He is the God that healeth. We need to remember from where we came from. We need to be aware where we are. But we need to have a healthy hope, a healthy faith, and even a joy, even though it might seem hard at times, and believe me, I've faced that many times this week. And where we are going, folks. God's not finished with me. I don't believe that. And God's not finished with you. Our journey begins, or in our case for many of us, it began when we came out of that pit. And still today, we're still in the process of being made into a vessel of honor for God's glory. Something that's made desirable to Him, useful to Him, and valuable to Him. Now, I don't know if you've been chosen out of that pit. If you haven't been, now's the time to recognize that Jesus is the one that can bring you out of that pit. You can't bring yourself out of it. Jesus can. And once He does, don't return to it. That's been the tragedy of too many in the supposed Christian world, because they're sucking on milk when they should be chewing on a good T-bone steak. Too many churches today are teaching on topics: how to have a better sex life, how to have a better family relationship, how to have a better this and have a better that. Stick around with this ministry. Only thing I'm interested in is how to be becoming a better disciple of Jesus Christ. Everything else, God knows. He knows how to deal with it if I turn it over to Him. Don't return to that pit. Don't continue if you're there living in that miry clay of this sick world. And that's what it is, sick. You think about the hand of God reached down from the heavens, and His light, His illuminating light, shined on me and shined on you. Don't resist His hand. Don't resist His hand. There's going to be pressures. There's going to be all kinds of circumstances along our journey, along this way. And guess what? Some heat's going to come with that. I'm preaching to myself, if you haven't figured that out, as a reminder to me It's going to be incorporated in the disciple series because every disciple needs to remember this too. From the pit they were dug from. That God, through His only beloved begotten Son, reached down, gave His life to rescue you from that horrible pit. Don't resist, like I said, His hand. No matter how hot it gets, no matter how much pressure it feels upon your life, God's in control. He knows the process. He has the design down for you. He knows what He's making according to His plan for His purpose concerning you. Concerning you. He is the potter. We are the clay. The process is to make something desirable, useful, and valuable. You might not think so, but don't insult God the way He's directing your life. Just because firecrackers ain't going off every turn, don't think He's not producing something desirable and useful and valuable for you. In your life, I mean. He wouldn't choose you if this was not His intent. And this is just the beginning, folks, is what I'm saying tonight. This is just the beginning. Do you get it? Do you get it? I plan to continue in this message. Now, it's going to interrupt everything else. And if you're here for that everything else, leave if you're not interested. But the next 2 or 3 messages when I'm here, this is what I'll be preaching on. I really want to take a look at these first 4 verses and try to understand everything about them in context, putting ourselves in Jeremiah's day to bring out the truth that is there for our understanding once it's brought to our attention, that I think only builds faith, only builds our pisteo level of faith, the amen faith, the so be it faith. You said it, God. I have all my trust and confidence in you. The hell with this world. They could stay in their pit if that's what they're choosing, but you pull me out of it. I'll keep preaching to the pit about you, but if that's where they choose to stay, I'm moving on. I won't go back. I won't turn back. I won't slip and start sinking into that miry clay again, so deep that I will possibly never see the illuminating light that's coming from above. This is a simple message. But it's a message that I don't preach that often. I try to get into more deeper things of God's Word. Things that nobody else dare touches because they're cowards. And that's all you can say about it. They're cowards. And because they're cowards, all you can do is sit back and criticize. Because they don't have the courage to preach it. I believe some of them know it to be true. Even if they can't agree with me or someone that preaches like me, and only can read 80%. Where's the other 80% then in their messages? Where's the other 80% that they're supposed to be delivering to you as the Word of God for your understanding? That's why I don't believe God's done with me yet. Not by a long shot. But as I go through my circumstances and my pressures of life, I'm asking for around-the-clock prayer. For either God to heal me or direct my path to get the healing. Either or. I prefer the first, but He's in control. After all, He's the potter. And whatever the circumstances and the pressures in your life, no different. No different. He didn't choose you out of that pit of the world, the miry clay, to abandon you. Just the opposite. He has plans. He has a design. He has something that will bring honor to Him and glory to Him. That's right, through me and through you. To make something desirable, something special, something useful, and something valuable. Don't let anyone tell you differently. Anyone. And that's where I'll pick up next time. Now I want to hear from you. Play this.